Da 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 da! What's my good cheer? Welcome, everybody. Let's give YouTube a couple of minutes, get those notifications out. In the meantime, if you've never popped into one of my lives before, hi, I'm Cindy. I explore the inside and the outside. And boy, have we been on a ride this week. I don't know. For myself, I feel like I've been on a ride, being introduced to new ideas and new insights, new understandings, if I should choose for them to be new understandings, new perspectives, right? New perspectives. You know, I was sitting here this afternoon and I was kind of looking through my notebooks and I was trying to clean them out and get rid of them. I'm kind of notorious for writing notes. For today, not really, a little bit of doodling and stuff. Touching base a little bit on addictions and a little bit on the triggers. You know, being somebody who comes from uh, a dynamic family, trauma, change, um, different personalities, have been very pertinent in my life. And, I've learned to be very hyper focused in the people that are in my atmosphere, in my surroundings. And quite often, I find that I can be triggered by the criticism. I can be triggered by not being listened to, right? Not necessarily believed in, right? Because that's something that, I grew up not being believed in. And in fact, after a while, you learn not to believe in yourself. And it's taken quite a few years to drag myself out of that bucket. But in that process, you know, we can learn a lot of things about ourselves. I suspect, these are old, old pieces of me, old parts of me, maybe old me's, right? You know, that over time, and again, in our choices, if we want to, we can resolve a lot of those issues that we grew up in, right? That made it so that we're so easily triggered in our adult lives. It cost me a lot of jobs, it cost me a lot of friendships, right? My family, again, because we are that dynamic family and we've been together all our lives, it became just kind of the way it was in rubbing each other that way, right? We were always arguing, picking on each other, and retaliating in ways. And this just all seemed to be the norm in my life. And I didn't recognize what kind of damage it was actually doing to me. You go over and you visit friends or family and they comment on your dress, how you dress, or, how your hair looks messy. So grateful. I gave up makeup just when I started doing my live shows. I don't know what got into me to give up the makeup because, I was that person who wouldn't even, it might seem like it's going off track here, but it really isn't. I was that person who would never, ever leave my house, not even to go to the grocery store or to the corner store, to 7-Eleven, right? Without being fully made up, my hair, my makeup, to the very best of my ability. And that was that lack of confidence in myself, that lack of self-worth in myself. And it was in my hypervigilance, right? Not to have people say mean things to me, right? And I thought if I plastered that makeup on, people would less likely, right, be mean because they could see that I made an effort to be presentable. This is the way that I thought. But, you go visit friends or family, and, sometimes there would be that criticism. I haven't been dyeing my hair, you guys. Again, it might seem like I'm going off track, but I'm not. I'm not dyeing my hair because I've been doing it every 6 weeks since I was 16 years old. I am 63 years old. So I decided I'm going to transition into my natural hair color, which I'm going to assume is at very least a salt and pepper now. I have not seen a gray hair on my head. I'm looking for them. I haven't seen them yet, but they gotta be there. But because I dye my hair every 6 weeks, right? Religiously, right? I've never seen the transition of my age in respect to my hairdo. Now, it's going to be a little bit uncomfortable, right? Even now, I'm saying I want to color my hair, right? I see the roots. They're getting dark, surprisingly getting dark, right? They should be getting silver, but I suspect it's that blonde hair that's kind of balancing it out so you don't really see the gray yet. But I suspect another 2 inches and I should be able to see it quite clearly. But there was a time that, you know, I would be so self conscious about my appearance. And if anybody criticized the way I dressed or my hair or my makeup or my skin, it would cause such instant shame in me. Not guilt, right? Not guilt. Guilt is something that you feel bad about, right? And you have to say no to somebody. You probably could do something, but you choose to say no, and then you go, oh my goodness, I could have said yes. And you feel guilty in that. And you should never feel guilty in not doing what you don't want to do. And that's the truth, unless it's something that you have to do. Now, in saying that, shame, right? Shame is where that goes to when you should have said sorry, right? When you hurt somebody's feelings, when you disrespected somebody, when you didn't give the respect where it was due. That is worthy of shame, not guilt, because we literally did something, right, that we know is not right. It's not good etiquette. It's not good hearted. And and for the most part, these criticisms, they come from our families, don't they? Because we're comfortable in that rough and tumble, in that argumentative blaming, that you borrowed my sweater and you didn't give it back, like these family stresses, right? We don't recognize what kind of damage that actually does to us. There's Cindy. I can take this because I did it all my life. I had no choice. It was part of my survival to plow through all of that, right? But I didn't know anything about my other parts. I didn't know about the existence and the emotions and the feeling out of a creation that was a part of me. And I gave that no consideration, right? And it wasn't my fault. I have to say that. it wasn't my fault because otherwise I'm going to feel shame on that because it's a terrible to think that I did cause myself issues. I caused my soul not to want to surface, to be afraid to surface, to be a part of this life that is me, that is me, right? But it's so buried that sometimes, right, the only chance that it gets to pop up is in my live shows. And even then, it doesn't get a fair shot because Cindy's coming in and going down side branches, and right? But that's the joy of it, right? That's not argumentative. That's not picking. That's, oh, you should be doing this because I would feel that shame. I would feel that I've done something wrong, or I'm right. I feel I need to make up for it, or I need to take in a few lessons, or make do some googling and make sure that I'm not overstepping my boundaries. My boundaries, which are set in place, right, for those other parts of me, for Cindy too. But again, Cindy's rah, 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 I could take it, right? And understanding that sometimes we have to be the steward of ourselves. So getting back into this idea about triggers, you know, quite often I would go and hang out with my sisters and they go, Cindy, what did you do to your hair? Go brush your hair, or like, don't you have any other clothes? Every time I see you, you're wearing something the same. And I'm just using these as analogies. It could be anything, right? It could be, what, you still don't have a job, and oh, right? And we feel bad, and these are not motions or feedback that we should be having in our day to day life because, again, it affects those other parts of us. For myself, I could just say, oh, I love my hair, leave me alone. Right? And yeah, maybe my other parts are going, oh, yay, Cindy, good girl. Sticking up, being a good steward. But also at the same time, I should not be putting myself in those situations where I know that I can be so impacted, right? As a highly sensitive, as empathic, I get impacted by these triggers. And this is just one trigger. I have lots, you know. For my worst trigger, if we're going to talk about triggers, it's why I believe so much that highly sensitives and empaths. And, there are other groups that belong in those categories, right? But, every time I come in and talk about the sensitives, and I could just label them sensitives, and I guess anybody would understand that they belong to that category. But I just want people to know that, just because I say empaths, but like, you could be you could be a narcissist in all truth and be sensitive. It's why narcissists are so tough. That's why they have those walls. That's why they're such know-it-alls. And they are right. And I'm going to say, because I come from a family that had narcissists, and I rubbed with the narcissists, and I lived with the narcissists, and I knew the narcissist game, right? Just as much as the narcissists in my family knew my game, and it just became one massive game of that agitation. Like I said, what did you do to your hair? Right? Did you clean your room? Right? And it was always in that state of mind that was so negative that there was no way in hell that those other parts of me could have ever come to the surface. I am so grateful for this digital age. I'm so grateful for being that highly sensitive and being that person that shut themselves to the world, right? And not really, right? I wouldn't have been invited to this party if I hadn't been, you know, kind of an explorer and let my curious mind take me off places. But I was living my own life. I was living my own singular life with people around me that I was people pleasing so they wouldn't point out my hair, even though that I felt my hair was perfectly fine. But if somebody said, right, what'd you do to your hair? Oh, it looks awful. And I'd be like, oh my goodness, I need to get a haircut. And oh my goodness, I need to color my hair. Oh, I need some makeup. Right. And especially, like right now, today, even, I'm so appreciative that I don't wear the makeup because it's so hot. I can't imagine just sweating that makeup off. And not only that, sweating it and allowing it to fill my pores up so that I'd wake up in the morning with a face covered with zits. And that's the truth because I had zits right up till I quit wearing makeup. And I would have to say, I quit wearing makeup probably as soon as I started waking up to some of these ideas. So I'm going to say well into my 50s. I suffered with acne, but it was in my own coping mechanisms. I would suspect that it was a little bit of the coping mechanisms, right? The way we pick our faces, we touch our faces, right? We all have different tendencies in how we cope, but I suspect because the way I felt about myself physically, that maybe, I did that to myself. I would rub my skin or pick my skin, and my face was so bad. So, in truth, I don't know if I can relate that it was because I stopped wearing makeup or because of the lessons I was feeling better. And I think it would probably have been a combination of the both, right? Quit the makeup and realizing I'm not getting that feedback that I expected, and then slowly becoming comfortable in that, and then realizing, oh my goodness, my skin's clearing up. I'm feeling better about myself. Oh my goodness, it's hot and I'm not just sweating my mascara into my eyes, right? And I get a true representation of how well I'm aging, right? So triggers have changed a little bit for me in some aspects of my life, some really big aspects that didn't serve me well to not feel comfortable in, right? But at the same time, I still have issues, right? With that which is breathing on the back of my neck in that authority figures, right? Because in my life, the authority figures were always the biggest danger, enemy number one. And even if they weren't enemy number one, I had been around it so much. And if they were authority, I would just label them that because, again, in my hypervigilance and in my upbringing, I just didn't really recognize, right? I just thought everybody was just the same. Everybody felt the same way about me, right? And my people pleasing skills were always in high force. And if I wasn't getting that negative feedback, right? Then I would say, "Oh, my people pleasing is working." Right? My people pleasing is working. And the people pleasing was just the worst of it. It was the worst of it for me because I couldn't be myself. I'm a giver. Naturally, I'm a giver. I, right? I love people pleasing. It's just when it's expected. And And when I know that I'm doing it for feeling good about myself. Here's a good example because it popped into my head. My sister Tracy used to be she's still generous with me, but we don't spend a lot of time together anymore. But my sister Tracy was so generous to me, always, making sure that I stayed afloat. And she made it possible for me to not stress out as much as I could have or should have, because it was my responsibility, right? It was my responsibility, but in my codependency, right? In being around my sister because she took such good care of me, right? In that people pleasing because she took such good care of me, I wanted to give back. And it wasn't because I was afraid of her or I thought she was going to make those comments to me that would make me feel bad. Those didn't stop. But because she was so generous to me, that because of the way I felt about myself, right? That was the shame that I was taking and not giving back. So what I would do is I would become her housekeeper and I would clean her house once a week, or I would work in her garden or in her yard, or she had projects for her husband. Um, right? I would help him get it done. And I loved doing that. I loved being the caregiver in that. I loved people pleasing in that because it made my sister feel good. And when she felt good, I felt good. And that shame, right? Because when I was being pulled down, I was pulling her down at the same time because she would have to cover whatever I was up to. But it was in those jobs, right? And then here's the trigger, in the breathing on my neck, in that authority, in the management, because in my experiences in jobs, and I didn't recognize it was my own negative attitude that invited, right, these characters to step into my life. And right, but it made me feel good to understand that, you know, even though uh, I was a people pleaser, that there were ways that I could pay back kindness. And I called it my little drummer boy, right? Because the little drummer boy had nothing to give to Jesus except to, right, his song, his voice, his drums. And that was enough. That was enough to get him to the point where he has his own Christmas carol now. That his story is told every year during the Christmas holidays. That legacy that he left behind was lessons that, right, even today, that we can learn to live by. It is a good lesson. Everybody says, "Oh, I will give back when I'm a gazillionaire." Even I said that, right? My dream was to be a philanthropist, right? And I always thought, if I ever get rich, right? Oh, I'm going to refurbish the Carnegie Libraries #1, and then all the the old heritage buildings in Winnipeg. I'm going to have them all fixed up because they have to meet certain codes now because they're protected, because they're historical landmarks, and because they're grouped in by Heritage Winnipeg. I would be wanting to give to them so that they could take care of these these buildings, and these buildings get great use, not just in beautiful downtown landscapes, but also we have uh, movie production companies come up here. We're shooting a John Travolta movie right now here in Winnipeg. Not quite sure. They had a few pictures, and because I know the city pretty good, I was trying to look at the houses and stuff to see what neighborhood they're shooting in. But I could almost guarantee you, my brother-in-law Ian, he's in that movie. He is an extra, and he he he's done many movies. And anytime that they do movies here, they're always giving him a phone call. He actually got a character part in the last movie. Usually he's walk-ins and stuff, but I think he got a short character part in the last movie he was in. I don't know what it was, right? I wish I took more interest in his life. If I was in his life a little bit more than I am, and I love my brother-in-law Ian, right? We would have great conversations, and I would want to know all about that passion of his. That passion that grew from crawling out of a bucket, crawling out of a crawling out of a crazy bucket. I am so grateful that he's in my life. I'm so lucky to have him as a brother-in-law. He takes such good care of my sister and my niece. Yeah, good he's a good man. Okay, you guys. So we're talking a little bit today about triggering, right? And how it makes us feel when your boss yells at you or somebody's telling you how to do something when you perfectly know how to do it, right? But somebody's harping on you and you just want to turn around and go, raw, right? And that is the negative. That's where we're not supposed to be emotionally in anything, because those other parts of us can't come to the surface and have the experience that they're here to be having, that they should be having, right? I hope those other parts of me are having a good time now, right? I've been sitting, I've been taking in those lessons for them and sharing with them and experiencing in my own experience with them, right? And what them are, right? But they're there. And, you know, if I had known what I was doing to those other parts of me, so it's been less than 10 years, right? And every once in a while they come to the surface. And it's a beautiful thing, I think, for them. I'm not going to put words in the mouth, right? But I expect that also it's a beautiful thing for me, because in truth, it was a long time in my life that I really didn't think I mattered to anybody except myself, right? And it was in those quiet moments with myself that those other parts of me would surface. But wouldn't it have been amazing, right? If, and it's coming, right? It might be lifetimes, right? A millennium, millions of years down the road, but it's coming. It will come. I am confident in that. Very encouraged, right, by the way the world is moving. What are you talking about, Cindy? It's like crazy town out there. Just look at what's going on in Texas. I'm looking at what's going on in Texas, right? I've been in it to see what's going on there, to see if there are any miracle saves, right? And I'm praying. They haven't had a miracle save since Friday. So they're suspecting that maybe it's um, right, it's a recovery situation now. But wouldn't that be amazing if it was? there was a miracle. Somebody's trapped underneath a tree or something, right? And there's at least one or two little miracles going on. It's possible, isn't it? But what I'm going to say about that, which was so beautiful, and why I think that we are actually doing pretty good, is the way the world's coming together in that way, that community's coming together, the way the media is respecting the situation, the rescuers, the people looking for their parents, right? The camp counselors, the stories of bravery. We need more of that, right? We don't need the traumatic events like that all the time. But if we could live like that all the time, we could. All you have to do is just live your life and then just work with what comes across your path and just be willing, right? And just be willing, like those Texans were so willing to risk their own lives. Lots of them. Oh my goodness, I was watching some of those rescues, just crazy. The people would, and listening to them too, because lots of them, they didn't even have time to grab their phone, right? So let alone there being any real footage in what was going on, but in the storytelling, right? In the storytelling. And uh and yeah, it's pretty amazing how far this world has come, because I see the beautiful hearts out there. I see people willing to try, right? And willing not to give up. So there's still a moment, a chance, a possibility. I am optimistic that there's still at least one or two miracles ready to happen. I'm waiting for it, right? And I'll probably still be popping into what's going on, right? Until I'm confident, right? That that's it. And then we'll just have to take it from there. And then we'll see. We'll see how people handle it, how people work with that. I would hate to think it would just be used as a political maneuver, right? To tag it on to somebody else, make somebody else the scapegoat for the weather. For goodness sake, the weather. Okay, you guys, I'm going to finish my tea, drink my juice, wash my face, and off to bed I go. Eugene, thank you so much. Thank you so much, as always, for popping into my live. I really appreciate that. You have a great night. For those of you who are just starting your day, you have a great day.